Me. I'm the new ruler in this unfamiliar land. Join me as I challenge myself to develop my settlement and become more powerful than my enemies. I'm here to build the biggest economy, the strongest army, and prosper over all else, from Viking hordes to dragon attackers. We shall prevail. I played 100 Days of Kingdoms and Castles, and here's how it went. Welcome to Begrudged. With a large map locked in, as well as 3 other leaders, my rise to power begins here. The map we ended up getting had 5 islands to choose from. All of them had stone and iron, but some were too small for what I needed. I settled on the far south map. This one had 1 iron node and 3 stone nodes. Once comfortable, we began our journey with some tree chopping. This was swiftly followed by some basic roads. I also went ahead and commissioned some further deforestation. What's a kingdom without its first housing? With a good chunk of graft being handled, I took a little moment to see what we could do next. With a tiny plan in mind, I went ahead and got some farms placed. My next problem would be stone, so a quarry is planned. For just a handful of peasants, our will was super strong. Right, let's expand this road. With the first housing finishing off, it meant our population had a good amount of room to grow. We were well into the 3rd year, so we got to enjoy the snowy landscape while we waited for a few things to build. It was the 4th year. We placed our first orchard. How do you like them apples? We followed this up with our first drinking source, a well. To automate wood, we directed our first forester's hut and tidied up some roads. A second quarry will speed things up. Quickly followed by our first ever cottage. I noticed the job priorities, and I took a little time to utilise a little bit here. Year 6 was here, and with it, our first ever dragon sighting. We monitored it all the way back to our settlement. Once it got there, it took a look at our puny island and must have thought it would gain nothing from me and move straight on without doing anything. Begrudged was safe. For now. I moved to place a stockpile near the forester. Then a charcoal maker. Year 7 was here, and we'd become a small village of 26 people. A free ride no more, peasants. Time to put down a treasure room and tax these people. With the gold potential starting, I took some time to see what we could actually build and was pleasantly surprised by how much. To mark the wonderful things I was doing, I looked to a town square to make things official. I then thought hard about some basic defense, planning to put a tower near the center. With every winter, we were wasting food stocks, so I put down a produce storage and a granary to help. I also placed a stockpile near the quarries. There truly were some lovely peaceful moments where I could enjoy the views. We prepared ourselves to build another cottage, and immediately after placing it, the worksite caught fire. Luckily, we had a nearby well and the fire was drenched. With some of the spare workers, I thought it was a good idea to start planning out some simple perimeters. This did require queuing up more wood cutting too. I then demolished the hovels and replaced it with another cottage. With population on the rise, it was time to look to more food options. A fishing hut. More walls going in. I also started to plan and line up where our initial defensive wall was going to go. The people wanted a tavern, so we looked to supplying some lovely ale. In a bid to improve happiness for the peasants, I commissioned a new chapel. Then, a lovely stone entrance point on the east side. With a solid amount of materials storing, I then looked to the south side of our settlement. I was eager to have a wall up as early as possible with the threat potential that lurks throughout the kingdoms. To future-proof the water requirements, I got another well down to cover the industry zone. Whilst having a read, I saw that the windmills improve farm efficiency. That was next. More tree felling was commissioned as I planned the settlement out further. More cottages going in to improve population potential. Our food needs are ever growing. In the 18th year, we were on 51 population. we moved into rearing pigs for a new selection of food, quickly followed by additional pathing. There really was no time to lose, so we got a big chunk of the perimeter wall planned out too. In an attempt to better distribute food, I placed a small market for the households. The dreaded day had arrived, where someone died. I placed a cemetery outside the initial walls. 20 years had flown by, and we had enough gold to start to think about defending our keep. Then some more stone walling. And more cottages. In year 21, it was quite exciting because we'd earned enough gold to build a dock. Oh, the possibilities. And with that, the first diplomat makes its way over to our kingdom from a rival's island. I wonder what they want. As they approached, they just wanted to make themselves known, it seemed. As I was in no position for war, I tried my hardest to be as friendly as possible. We definitely aren't ready for anything else. More housing, please. I hadn't really been paying too much attention when a couple of fires broke out. The peasants were also absolutely starving. Now, further increase the wood production, I thought it was best to put another forester down just outside the south side wall. A new entry would also be required. The next dragon had been sighted, and this time he was a bit fiery. As it reached our settlement, our towers tried to pelt it with all it could, but it had little effect. It then got angry, breathed an incredible amount of fire onto our farms. With food shortages already a concern, we scrambled to fix the situation. With the dragon drama complete, we put down another windmill and started to surround it with more farms. In the hopes that we would soon have some fish, I placed the fishmongers to increase the output. Another diplomat makes his way over. This time, again King Mathan. How can I help you, sir? He asked for us to clear a wolf den, but we had no way of helping, so I had to decline. He didn't like me for that at all. It was the year 26. Our very first merchant arrived at the shores. They were selling some decent wares. As we were in no position to sell and had little gold, we had to take this bit of food and then sent them on their way. This was quickly followed by the introduction to Queen Pouchet. We said our niceties and she went on her merry way. She seemed pretty nice, but I got a feeling she's going to be a bit wild. We had almost filled our rooms, so another cottage was commissioned once more. With the wheat increasing and the charcoal burning, next was to make bread at the baker's. Who doesn't love fresh bread? Then some more apples. Down at the docks, we needed to secure the area just a little bit. Our corners also got replaced by stone. With the iron mine being over the water, we prepared a bridge to reach it. And then a second charcoal kiln. Just as we hit the beautiful 100 population, we met a new ruler, Queen Strizdom. I don't know how you say that. She made an appearance on our shores to say hi. She looked a little bit shady, to be honest. Nevertheless, we managed to plan the very first cottage. Now, what happened next was new. Vikings! I'm not sure I'm ready for any invasion just yet. I think we got lucky, because they all just sailed straight past our island. Or at least, I thought they did. They managed to sneak themselves in through a weak spot, and even killed a peasant. Luckily, both the keep and the archer tower make pretty quick work of the squadron. Phew. Now this is only going to get worse from here on out. Time was truly flying by, and in year 31 we managed to path towards the iron mine and get one built out there. I also thought it was a good idea to consider some basic defense just out by the iron mine. Same goes over by the keep. With the iron mine in, I placed a stockpile to store near it, then a wagon to bring it in to the city. You know things are progressing when you get your very own blacksmith, right? I was just there, admiring the growth, when I realised I should replace the cottages with manor houses. With food stocks still struggling, I realised that the pig industry needed a little more priority, so I moved it up. On year 34, our very first ballista tower is built. Dragons, bring it on. Another merchant ship arrived, which allowed me to balance my food reserves a little more. In the blacksmith, I set it to just make tools for now. Things were really moving so fast, I was struggling to keep up. Queen Pouchet turned up once again with some free booze that her niece had made. Admittedly, it wasn't very nice, but I was trying to be polite. Turns out I probably should have told her it was terrible because the peasants hated it. In year 36, I got to work on the Chamber of War, a key part to ensuring our future. Then, yet another dragon was sighted. He didn't come near us though. Must have seen that shiny new ballista. Whilst thinking ahead, I placed a clinic. Never know when the plague might hit. Let's get yet another manor house in. We were struggling with iron, so I rearranged the priorities just a little to bring that up. Now, King Mathan thinks himself quite the comedian. He proceeded to tell possibly the worst joke ever. But not wanting to wind him up too much, I agreed he was an absolute hilarious stand-up guy, and we moved on with our day. No harm done, right? Anywho, let's get the defense around the iron mine a little. With our stone reserves looking healthy, it was time to replace parts of the wall. A trader arrived. I bought 20 tools. Out of nowhere, the scary Queen Strijdom arrived talking about how she wanted to tame the dragons and ride them into battle. I need to be careful with this one, as she seems a little cuckoo. We shall see, eh? Over near the new fishing shack, I placed a new food store. Then we moved into a little more wall replacement to solidify the border, followed by another archer tower on the west side. Now, although this felt a little eager, I did go ahead and plot an archer training area because the future needs thinking about. Yet another diplomat arrives with, quite frankly, a ridiculous request. How am I supposed to help clear a wolf den without any boats or soldiers? We then got an archer tower over by the docks, followed by some more residential planning. It was year 41. I paved some stone roads to be built, as this improves the movement speed throughout our settlement. I also squeezed a second small tavern in. As times move forward, it was time to remove some unusable rocks around the mine, as well as our third charcoal maker. Here comes the comedian. So, I had a little bit of a defensive idea at the docks. This involved walling all around it. This then led me to try and plan out, on the water, a sea gate to get in and out, followed by some walling around. Some piers were probably needed. King Mathan, the comedian, was here to tell me how great he was at fending off the Viking raid. Cheers, bud. Alright, so I was trying to figure out a good way to expand out on the weird island shape we had. I did go with the south side, as a lot more food is going to be required if we want to survive. This consisted of 4 squares down and removing some of the trees in the way. Then the crazy queen arrived, demanding that we be ready to pay her tribute. For now, I'll save a bit of face and just say okay, as we're not quite ready to actually fight anyone just yet. Remember that water planning? Well, let's start on the pier. So rather than relying on these tiny charcoal makers, I thought to just get a large one and start pumping it out. I also removed another dead rock at the iron mine. Let's get some more of these walls changed to stone. Straight into a few more stone roads. Rapid running. We also needed a lot more housing to keep up with the growth. With that in mind, it was time to clear out a chunk of trees. Good morning, Queen Pouchet. Now, she did start waffling on about some beautiful sky, blah, blah, blah. I agreed to keep her happy as we would need to consider an ally. She was actually quite harmless too, so yeah, she's alright. In year 46, we got our very first library in. This would boost some happiness. I realised quickly that half our building works weren't completing due to me adjusting this earlier. Year 47, and another merchant ship arrived. I purchased some armaments and a bit more food. With our south side expansion finalising, I demolished the old walls. This really did open up quite a bit of space. With plenty of space opened up, I got a third orchard in. The first pier section was done, so I got the wall planned out, ready. Followed by more pieces of pier. Out of nowhere, a dragon was heading straight for us. As it flew in, our towers started pelting it with everything we had. The ballista was doing some serious damage, but not enough to take it down before it set some houses on fire. Injured, it fled the wrath of my newly designed defences. Moving on, I demolished some old cottages to make room for more manor houses. I also ramped up the builder headcount once more. We had successfully survived 50 years. We took it in by getting some more stone walls and a quick bird's eye view. It was then time to make room for the large iron mine by removing the remaining rocks. The next phase of our pier had completed. More walls. It was time to look towards training some archers. Although we didn't have the population to cover it, we would eventually. This was the perfect excuse to get another manor house planned. We were just shy of 200 population at this point. I soon noticed that our charcoal stock was skyrocketing. I took the opportunity to demolish the smaller ones. Our food stocks were dwindling. I kept pushing the population numbers up without considering the requirement for food at all. This was a good time to add another 8 farms and a windmill in the middle. There was a lot going on, but luckily a merchant arrived, purchased some grain and a bunch of iron. Whilst I was looking over some settlement improvements, I didn't even notice our archer tower was annihilating a Viking raider team. I just absolutely love archers in any game I play. Once the drama had faded, I went ahead and got 2 small churches in. It was time to start thinking about the defences some more. I scaled some elements of the wall to potentially cover more space with the towers. I then placed a fresh tower and removed the old one to scale the height a little more. This was quickly followed by more stone wall replacements. Okay, the time had come for a little more planning on the pier. And some more apples. The pier continues. The settlement is growing. The demand for booze increases. Let's get a large tavern in. Our charcoal production was booming. Let's increase how much we sell. Well, well, would you look at that? The large iron mine is going in. Here we go. Sell the charcoal and buy a bunch of stuff in return. Well, hello crazy Queen Strijdom. She was actually only here to discuss new trade prices. We set some standards and quickly moved on. Let's get more houses in, please. In year 58, I finally realised how daft I was being. I set the cart up correctly to transport iron from the mine stockpile back into our stockpiles inside of the settlement. Next, another good chunk of pier planning began. We would soon be walled in. I also began rock removal around the stone quarry. The last walls were going in. So far, so good. Well, well, here she is, the lovely Queen Pouchet, and she brought me an amazing gift. I think she may like me a little too much. I hadn't noticed until now, but our first archer squad had completed. There was no way for them to ascend our walls and defend, so I put in some wall stairs to fix this. With the archers up on the walls, I began to build the stone walls all around them, replacing the shoddy wooden defences. Alright, so a bit of a tough time ahead. Vikings started coming to our shores once more. the perfect time to familiarise ourselves with the way of the archers. After a bit of commandment and moving around, we were able to take them down without posing anyone or taking any damage to our settlement. A huge victory on this day. We had also accumulated enough to get the large quarry in. During the 64th year, I spent a bit of time completing the stone wall. The final pieces are now replaced. In year 65, Begrudged became a bustling city. I took a moment during this time to look at health and happiness. There were times where I often found myself just chilling, watching the boats go by. Now, back to reality. Let's get another fishing hut down. King Mathan arrived once more with his diplomats. He was here to discuss his trade prices. I gave my price, he gave me his. He was a bit peed off with my crest, to be honest, but I was feeling a little more ballsy. I then continued to add layers to the walls, going up and up. And then some more. Now, the merchant arriving was perfect because we had so much charcoal that we could sell to them. I sold over 100 units and then used the earnings, purchase a little more food and some more stone. As I was taking a look through what we could build, I found something called a noria. This basically utilises a wheel to push water up through the settlement when led via aqueducts. Now, I just needed to figure out how to correctly place the damn thing. We needed to further fell a few more trees. We were into year 67. Just look at it. I'm proud to be where we are so far. Alright, let's get the second blacksmith going. I fully underestimated the sheer amount of stone required to keep on top of raising the walls. Onward and upward we go. The time had come for a second food storage and a large granary. In year 68, I cleared out a load more trees. We were completely maxed on housing, so another manor house was definitely required. Here she is once more, the scary one. She demanded a tribute of 130 gold. I took a bit of offence to this, to be honest, and told her no. She really didn't like this. Year 69, and we were rock hard. Moving swiftly on, the west side of the island was ripe for the taking, so we looked at beginning a phased expansion once more. This also meant reworking the entrance point. That's fine though. We followed with carving out a load more trees. This was going to be a nice expansion for the housing estate. On the opposite side, I raised the corner really high to plan a little more defence, as well as another archer tower. Back over on the west side, a load more walling was planned out. To keep up with food demand, I also added our first butcher. Straight into the first aqueducts. Once again, we made use of the merchant for food and resources. The new expansion will need some more pathing. The first manor house is placed in the expansion area, with some more roads. I then queued up a couple more archer squads. The last little bits of the west wall were just completed, as well as an entrance on the rock removal. A third blacksmith, you say? Yeah, it's time to ramp it up. With a nice chunk of fertile land sitting on the west side, I went ahead and got 3 more farms around another windmill. Then, 2 more aqueducts, as well as a reservoir. Queen Pouchet arrived once again to negotiate some more prices with me. No problem, Queen. Just as we were house planning, the Vikings arrived at our shores once more. They arrived at our shores, went for some weird little swim, then decided to attempt a push on our settlement. Luckily, we were more than prepared with a bunch of archers just waiting to rain arrows on them. We cleaned and mopped them up super fast. Alright, sell that charcoal. Onto the west wall. I started to scale up really high, as there were some wolf dens in the forest that needed clearing out. A new well goes in the housing district. On the south side, I began to also demolish for further expansion. We make this a big expansion once more. This also requires 5 new pier pieces. In an attempt to also increase our efficiency, I spent a bunch of gold and some stone improving the roads around here. Let's clear out the remaining rocks. I decided to change the initial planning and bring the roads down a little further to increase our build radius. This meant a much larger farm area. The peasants were complaining just a little bit, so I looked to see what we could do to improve. The option was a bathhouse. I found a nice little spot for it, but little did I know that it required a lot of water. Up next, we cleared out all of the old west side wall border. This allowed a good chunk of space for some more manor housing to go in. The remaining south side wall also completed. We then placed a second cattle ranch and sold more coal. In some of the new space we had created, I went ahead and got a nice church down. We completed the south side with a stone bridge over the little bit of water. A second large charcoal burner goes in. In the 80th year, I decided to rearrange and place the bathhouse a little more central. Also, another tavern. In year 81, I went around and did a lot of wall restructuring and scaling it much higher all the way round. New housing equals new marketplace. The merchant arrives once more, but this time carrying a special item. This would make all archer towers 25% stronger. I scrambled around selling whatever I could and making the 500 coins to buy it. Money well spent, I'd say. We continued to scale food production where possible, and a new clinic just in case. As part of our wider plan to improve happiness, I got a second library in. This scales up over time. I then looked to our gold stores. It was at this moment I realised I messed up with the bathhouse. It requires water from the aqueducts to function. I went ahead and started to build towards it. I wasn't paying very good attention to the Viking attack when I realised we had to deal with not 1, not 2, but 3 ships at our shore. They dropped off these humongous beasts that ploughed through our defences and into our settlement. Luckily, we had archer squads and towers ready to absolutely pelt them into the ground. A huge victory. Because of what happened, we rebuilt and scaled defences a little stronger on the east side walls. The Vikings also got a bit gangster on me and started doing drive-bys in their boats at the sea gate. They only did a little bit of damage though, and did move on. I was wrong about those boats though. They ended up pulling up on the east side shores once again and started to march on my walls. Again, we hammered them with everything we had, from archer towers to archer units. We were able to bring them both down without taking any further damage. Another whopping victory. The next plan was to get a masonry building done for automatic repairing of our structures. The aqueduct progress also continues. Sell, sell, sell. I finally got around to placing a barracks. Now, the tides are about to turn. Psycho Queen Strijdom arrived and was demanding a tribute of 170 gold. I won't stand for this, so we sent her packing. This means war. It really didn't take long before the Nutter was attacking me over our gold refusal. We had a few swordsman units smashing down our south walls. I grabbed all of the archers and started to position them ready to defend. Luckily, we had a ballista that was further back that could cover us as they break through. A great defense as she continues to try and take us down. I immediately repaired the walls. He also sent over a siege unit. This thing rips the walls down so fast. We directed the archer fire, and it cleared it out. The waves just didn't stop. I couldn't even get my walls repaired before they were in and destroying my aqueducts. The cheeky bugger. The archers on the wall were holding strong though, and we were still good. Bring it on, lady. The defence was working, and it had gone down to single units of archers arriving on our shores. They were annihilated as soon as they stepped foot on our island. We had a moment's break to continue our expansion. The south shore was now locked down. It was a bloodbath for anything that came into the jaws of my archers. In some other happy news, the last part of the aqueducts was placed toward the bathhouse. She continued her push with singular units at a time. Something tells me she spent most of her army. Come on. The final nail in her attack was another ballista tower. She finally realised she wasn't going to breach again on the south wall. So, she shifted her approach and attempted some soldiers at the southwest wall. They also met the same fate pretty damn swiftly. She really is quite the stubborn fool. Because of her behaviour, I built my own siege workshop, followed quickly by training some swordsman squads. With everything easing, I took a look at the bathhouse. Turns out the water wasn't reaching. I found a spot to put a second Noria. Then, I planned out the pier pieces to trunk the aqueduct. Whilst waiting, I decided to put a bit of time into potential expansion on the East Island. Looks like they landed on my shores. Prepare the defences, people. Alright, here they come. Arrows rain down. They march viciously on our walls. Can we take them down, or will they breach? We pelted for what felt like an eternity. They broke through some sections, but we managed to hold them off and take down a sizable attack with the archers. Good job, my men. We hadn't even gathered our thoughts when another one started to march on us. This one also met the fate of its fellow Viking. It was about time we got another archer tower. We finalised the aqueduct pieces to the new Noria. It was the 98th year. We prepared a lot higher walls. Oh, here she is. She had the audacity to come demanding payment to end the war when we were clearly pummeling everything she has. No, the war continues. In year 99, I queued up our first 2 siege engines and prepped more expansion. It was time to plan the offensive. 2 transport ships going in. And with that, we hit 100 years. Thank you for joining me so far. Please subscribe if you aren't already, and let me know what you think of that crazy queen.